Hi, everyone. Welcome to Clutch Entertainment today. And today we're going to be talking about my top 10 meals to make. There's some meals that, there's only two that I have not made that I'm going to make. But all these meals that have made in the past, they're really good and they're very delicious. I'll talk about each one and talk about, what I'd rate them out of 10 and how much work each of them take and a little bit about each one. So we'll get right into it. So the first meal that is my favorite, I would say, one of my favorites is chili mac. And as you can see here, this is just an example of somebody who has chili mac or spaghetti. You can have macaroni noodles or you can have spaghetti with this. But basically, it just has spaghetti, chili. You can add vegetables to it, like celery, onions, tomatoes. You can change a lot with it. It's all up to you, but you have the meat and then you have the chili beans also. The difficulty to make this isn't very difficult. Mostly it's just getting the spaghetti noodles all ready, and then after that you end up making the chili and put it all in one pot. It takes like maybe a total about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to make. But overall, it's really delicious. Like it's very filling. It's definitely a meal that you can tie over for a few days. If you make a bunch of extras or if you have some extras on the side. But chili mac is probably the one of my things that I go to the most if I'm like looking for a meal to eat or I'm getting kind of hungry or something like that. So yeah, so basically that's the way I would put it as. My second favorite thing to make, one of them, is probably stuffed peppers. They're really good. You fill it with rice, beans, and you can fill it with like chicken or hamburger or whatever else you want to add, like some spices also. Stuffed peppers are a really good way to get some vegetables and nutrition, along with some rice, which is very filling, and then also you get the protein with it. Typically, these are something that you bake. You can just put it in a pan in the oven, or you can do it in a skillet. It just depends how you want to do it. There's a ton of different recipes out there. You'll have to Google it, but the one I use, I basically just stick it in the oven, and I let it bake for I think it's around like 15, 20 minutes or so. But overall, it's a really good, filling, tasty recipe. And oh, let me go back one thing real quick. Let's see. The chili mac, I would rate that if I had to rate it, probably about an 8.5 out of 10. The stuffed peppers, I would probably rate it about a 8.5 out of 10 also. They're just really delicious. They're really good, and they're very filling. So you won't be hungry after you end up eating the stuffed pepper. You might have another one, even there. So the third thing, would be spaghetti and meat sauce. This is actually probably my favorite food to eat. This is really not difficult at all. Basically, all you do is you cook the spaghetti 10 minutes, and then you just put the meat in there after you've already cooked the meat. You could pre-cook the meat, which is probably a lot better and a lot more economical, as far as your time and stuff. I would not just put uncooked meat into the spaghetti and mix that. That wouldn't be good. So yeah, I would definitely cook the meat prior to putting this in. This probably takes around 25, 30 minutes, cooking the meat beforehand and then combining it with the sauce. And a lot of times, when I make the sauce, I typically put garlic powder, I put parsley, I put basil and oregano. That's how I make my tomato sauce. So if I'm doing that with the chili, I do that also. But overall, that's probably the best way to make the spaghetti and meat sauce because you don't really need too much to it. There's not a whole lot to making spaghetti and meat sauce. It's basically, cooking the spaghetti, like I said, for 10 minutes and then cooking the sauce and the meat sauce maybe like 5-10 minutes after that. But overall, it's just wait. A lot of waiting is for the boiling of the water, and you can actually, if you really wanted to make it a little more nutritious, you can throw in some like broccoli, some carrots, some peas, some corn, like any kind of vegetable really works with the spaghetti, and then basically you just put the meat sauce on top. But if you're just going like traditional, you can also do meatballs where you shape the meat and then you cook the meatballs separate and you can put like onions, garlic, all kinds of different spices in the meatballs, and then put the meatballs into the sauce, and then you can cook it that way. So that would be the other alternative, but spaghetti meat sauce is definitely my favorite food. I really enjoy it all the time. But yeah, it's my favorite thing to make because it's my favorite food. So we'll go to the next thing, which is tacos, like homemade tacos. So tacos and burritos that you make at home are something that, it's very easy to make. It's very easy to, you know, make your own customizable food to eat. You can do a lot. This is just an example. It looks like a very healthy taco here. There's just the soft enchilada shell. And then you have hamburger meat, and then you have tomatoes, onions, lettuce, cheese. Typically, that's what I do, something like this. I also like to add some salsa in there sometimes, or I might want to add like a crunchy shell on the outside and then use a soft shell on the inside. There's just a lot of different ways to do it. But overall, tacos, that probably takes about 30 minutes to make if you want to make decent tacos. You got to pre-cook the meat and get that all ready, and then you could put it in the pan, and then I would put the ingredients separate. Most of the time, you put them in like little bowls, and then you take the bowls, and then you basically you can make yourself your own, like almost like a buffet kind of style, where you just go to each thing and then just pour a little bit on the tacos. But typically, I recommend getting the smaller soft taco shells typically, just because that way you can fill it up with less, and then you can get like more and more leftovers, which is the amount you get, and that way you're not like filling in a big taco or filling in a big burrito, and then it's all falling out on you. So basically, that's what I would go with. I would just go with something like a smaller, like fajita shell. I think that's what it's called, fajita, not enchilada, like I was saying earlier. But yeah, a small fajita shell that's soft, and typically I go with like more of the healthier side. Lettuce, tomato, onions, cheese, hamburger, and then salsa. And then you can add anything else you want to. If you wanted to add some like chicken instead of hamburger, or if you want to add pork instead of hamburger, or steak instead of hamburger, there's a lot of different alternatives you can do with tacos. But the easiest way to make it is with ground beef, I would say, just because it takes the shortest amount of time if you're strapped for time. But there's a lot of healthy options with tacos, and there's a lot of way to customize them. So the next thing we're going to talk about is steak and potatoes. Now, the thing about steak is something that I've never barbecued outside, but I've made it in like a pan before, and I've made it in like I have like a new wave oven kind of thing, and I've cooked it that way. But typically, you don't want to overcook steak. You don't want to make it well done. I'm sure some people have it well done. It's like almost burnt. Like you don't want it like that. You want it to be something that's like a little medium well. So there's like different. I'm sure you know about steak or when you cook meat. There's different levels of how pink the meat is, and rare is like the worst. Rare is like completely pink, uncooked, whereas well done is completely dark, and then medium well is typically like in the middle. There's like medium well done. There's all kinds of different levels, but typically I say that medium well done or medium well is probably the best you want to go with, because it's not too hard, it's not too burnt, and it's something that's perfect. And then also with the potatoes, potatoes are really great in a skillet. You're cooking in a skillet, they typically take about 15 minutes, and you put a top on it, and you can just put all kinds of different seasonings and such on it, which makes it really nice. Yeah, but making the potatoes along with the steak makes for a really good meal. You have the carbs and you have the protein, which makes it a really good meal. And then typically you can have like a salad with it. And salads are typically pretty easy to make. So I would definitely go with steak and potatoes, and I really enjoy it. Another one of my favorites is chicken stir fry. So taking a bunch of different vegetables, sticking it in a pan, and then pre-cooking the chicken. And then you can combine it with some kind of like butter or sauce or something like that, and you can really make it, really delicious. I know my mom growing up, she always used to make something like this, and she even put peanuts in it. So I mean, if you like peanuts with like all kinds of different stir fry, like vegetables and chicken, like I would go with that. It adds a little flavor to it, which isn't bad at all. But chicken stir fry is something that I really haven't made, but I do plan to make it eventually. But it's really good. It's very delicious from when I've had home cooked meals that are from chicken stir fry, and it's definitely something that I would make in the future. So the next thing we have is meatloaf. And meatloaf is so good. It's basically, I would say meatloaf is the equivalent of a meatball without, um, it's like a little bit more seasoned, I would say. A little bit more seasoned. So, like, it's basically a giant meat cake, basically. And you put it all kinds of stuff in it, like onions, celery, um, you can put peppers in it. You put it top it off with typically some tomato sauce or ketchup, or barbecue even. There's a lot of different ways to make meatloaf, but it's definitely a really good meal, and you can also add it with potatoes if you want to. A lot of ground beef or meat goes good with potatoes, so I would definitely recommend eating meatloaf with that. I've actually never made a meatloaf either, so that's something that I plan to do in the future. So, and then a pot roast too. Like, I've never made a pot roast, but this is a pot roast. You usually have like, like pork, or you have some kind of like, other meat, in here, and you have a bunch of vegetables, and you cook it over, the fat or animal grease. I actually had this, on over Thanksgiving, and it was really good. My brother made it, and it was really delicious. I've never had it like that, so I mean, typically with the potatoes, the carrots, um, I think there may have been tomatoes. I can't remember, but I know there was potatoes, carrots, and the meat, and just a bunch of spices and stuff. But typically you have a bunch of like a broth poured over it, like the beef broth, which makes it really good. It's got a lot of flavor. It's really tasty, and I would definitely, if I at some point I figure out how to make it, I'll go ahead and make it. But it's really good. And then next we have typical barbecue. So, going outside and you barbecue out on the barbecue pit, barbecue hamburgers, hot dogs. Can't go wrong with that. Especially like, in the summer, how people have barbecues and they end up having hamburger and hot dogs and all that. It's definitely one of my favorite things to eat. You shouldn't eat it too often because it's not super healthy, because you're typically like, putting over a fire, and there's a lot of, what's the word for it? Carcinogens. But it makes it really tasty when you cook it over a fire, and it's like fire grilled and stuff like that. So, I would say hamburgers and hot dogs are one of my top things. And then the very last thing, is breakfast for dinner. Growing up, like, we would make it a lot for dinner. I've done it a few times here living on my own, but making like all the sausage, the buttered toast, eggs, French toast, bacon, waffles, pancakes, pretty much anything. Like, you can even have donuts too, if you want. There's hash browns also. There's so many different ways to make breakfast for dinner. And I would definitely recommend, having breakfast for dinner once in a while. It saves time because breakfast isn't that hard to make. A lot of times, cooking is a little bit of sausage or cooking a little bacon. Bacon takes like 5 minutes. Eggs take like 5 minutes. Unless you hard boil them, they take like 10. There's a ton of different ways to make breakfast food, but there's a lot of good ways to make it. But yeah, that's definitely the last thing I would go for. But yeah, so those are all my top things that I would make or I need to plan to make. But overall, thanks for watching Clutch Entertainment today. Hopefully I gave you some ideas of what kind of foods you may want to make or something that you might want to try out. They're all great foods, all great meal choices. And if you would like and subscribe, that would be great. And then if you make a comment in the comment section below, I'll be happy to answer your questions. But thank you for watching Clutch Entertainment today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.